not your birthday, so I did not get a card. But it doesn't matter, 'cause I did not get that far. Inside your house, should have asked you to come out. Instead, I stared at my phone, waiting around. It's been a while since I have attempted to.
Yep, we're recording.
Okay. Welcome to Emo Trash.
Welcome back, everybody. This is like episode 4, maybe? Is that episode?
This is like 7 or 8, dude.
No, it isn't. It
Like
can't
5
be.
or 6?
Maybe like 5 or 6. But
5 or
like, there's
6.
no
It's
way
not
we're at
4.
7 and 8. Wait, okay, so we've done...
Oh, God, we're gonna go
Are we
through them
gonna
on air.
Yes, we are. All right, we're doing this live. Are we counting...
Fuck it, we'll do it live.
Are we counting the first episode with Super American?
I would count Super American.
Okay, so that's episode 1, and then episode 2 was... This is episode 5.
Damn. You were closer.
Scrub.
Okay, so this week we're going over 2 albums. The common album we're discussing is we're going to be discussing the Rose EP by the Front Bottoms.
Oh shit, that's right, we're doing the Rose EP. Why the fuck was I listening to Back on Top?
Do you want to do Back on Top?
No, we can do the Rose EP. I, for some reason, thought we were doing Back on Top. I was like, yeah, listen to Back on Top.
We can do either, honestly, it doesn't matter to me.
The Rose EP's fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
So this week we're going over the Rose EP by the Front Bottoms.
And then My Prescription, which is GN by Ratboys.
Interesting.
Interesting.
It was a very interesting combination because they were very different bands.
Very different bands, but like they
Though-
kind of share orbits. They're both
They're the
like,
closest. They're very different, but they're the closest sonically that we've had.
yeah, between a Common and a Prescription.
Yeah, the closest
Yeah.
like sounding the same.
Oh, for sure.
But they're such different bands in
Well,
how
yeah.
they
It's
do
because
things.
they have like slightly different stylings. Like they're both part of like the rock genre or like the
Indie rock genre, yeah.
But like the style that they approach it with is different.
The
for
way
sure.
they view their genres are very different.
So where do you want to start?
We should start with the Common. Let's start with Front
yeah,
Bottoms.
Let's start with Front Bottoms. So the track list for Rose EP, I'll pull up right now.
The track listing for Rose EP is very interesting because, as a bit of a setup to anyone who doesn't know what the Rose EP is, the Rose EP is an EP by the Front Bottoms that came out after not Back on Top, after Talon of the Hawk. That was basically a bunch of re-recordings from their old stuff, like before self-titled.
Yeah, this was on their like demo EP. What was it called? It was like something about a grandma.
Oh my god, it has like a pool on the front or something. I don't even know if all these songs were on it. I think some of these songs are on it. I think some of these songs didn't even make that album.
Let's find out. Grandma versus Pneumonia. My Grandma versus Pneumonia.
What's on My Grandma? Because I believe there's like 4 or 5 of the songs that are on this EP, but they're not all. So there's
a lot on My Grandma versus Pneumonia. This is like the very first demos for the Front Bottoms. But the songs that are on here that are also on the Rose EP are Flying Model Rockets, which was originally My Grandma versus Pneumonia.
Oh.
I guess.
Is that it?
No, there has to be.
We're looking at the wrong album. It's not My Grandma versus Pneumonia. Quinn last week was talking about the acoustic album.
Are you sure it's not My Grandma? Because
Because it had like 5 or 6 songs. It had Be Nice to Me on it. It had a few. So they released an acoustic album of demos a while ago. And
Correct.
then for the Rose EP, they re-recorded some of them. They grabbed some other songs like Flying Model Rockets, which was originally on My Grandma vs. Pneumonia, which is like their first, I think, full band album. I don't know. Before
like
they
that.
got signed, it gets a little iffy, like where and when they released things, at least for me.
And then they sold out to Fueled by Ramen. I mean, they signed to Fueled by Ramen.
I love their stuff on Fueled by Ramen. Well, I love Back on Top.
Yeah, right.
It's
a great album, and the EP is good.
I believe the EP is also on. It might be the first release on Fueled by. No. Yes. No. It's not. It is absolutely before Fueled by Ramen. It is the last thing they released before they went to Fueled by Ramen. And it's just a bunch of re-recordings, but it's a very interesting EP because it's very, very childish songs. It's very early in the career, very childish songs, but they're taken to this max level of production similar to Back on Top, which is a very polished album.
Right, and I think it's a good transition because it's the album between Talon of the Hawk and Back on Top, and Back on Top is the debut album for their signing to Fueled by Ramen.
It's very polished,
yeah,
it's very
right.
nice.
It's a good transition between, oh, we're a bunch of fucks who play guitar and we're sad and we live in New Jersey, to, hey, we're a band and like we have production value and like we care about like the final product and stuff. and it's cool. It's a very interesting, like, it's very cool to witness, to like sort of be able to observe the transition between we're just getting our like feet wet to we are officially signed to a label and this is like our career at this point.
Yeah, also just from a like perspective of like they're a band, it's a very interesting way to do it because they're getting signed by Fueled by Ramen. They probably knew they're gonna go a lot more polished in that direction. They're like, we need to like tell fans we're going to go in this polished direction without scaring them.
Right.
And they're like, if we release like a new single, that could be scary. Like, oh my god, they changed their sound. The best way to do it is literally just take the songs they already love and show them what it would look like if it was recorded in this era of their band. We're entering this new era of band. This is what the songs are going to look like, but here's songs you're already familiar with, you're comfortable with, and you have a connection to.
So with the past 2 to 3 minutes of us just talking about the like setup for the album, let's actually talk about it.
Yeah, I feel like this EP deserves some setup simply because it's such a... Again, it's just re-recordings.
Yeah, right.
But the songs themselves, it flows particularly well, especially for an EP.
Oh, no, yeah,
It
for
feels
sure.
compact.
It does. It feels like... It doesn't feel like a collection of random songs to put out an EP.
No.
It feels like something cool. It feels like a short story almost.
It does. It feels... I feel like we get into this a lot, but this is just because it's one of the things I care about most in the music I listen to. A lot of this album feels like world building.
You think so?
But not to the level of... I mean, not to the level. Whereas, even in something like The Mountain Goats Back on Top, you felt like there was a story going through it.
Wait, the Mountain Goats Back on Top?
The Mountain Goats Beat the Champ.
Yeah.
The Mountain Goats
there
Beat the
you
Champ.
go.
It's mostly world building, but you see a story go through it. You see these characters do things. This EP feels devoid of really, besides maybe flying model rockets, it feels devoid of...
Like setting?
No.
Like scenery?
It's all setting to me.
Oh, so you think it's devoid of characters? You think it's devoid of like
it's
people interacting in the space, and it's just kind of the space itself?
Yeah, it feels more like the space itself. It feels very much like a bunch of little short stories about a point in time.
Right.
Instead of we're watching this character or a assortment of characters go through, which I do feel more on Talon of the Hawk or something, where I feel like they're going in love, they're coming out of love in this, where this is just like a bunch of short stories about being weird when you're a kid.
Yeah, right. Just fucking around in New Jersey, basically. Where do you want to start with this album? Should we just start from the top?
Well, yeah, I guess we can start with Flying Model Rockets, and... Yeah, the fact is, just to finish the last of my thought, there doesn't really seem to be any, like, huge emotional turning point or any, like, learning through the characters. It's just them talking about, like, these little things they went through and how they, like, kind of form this bigger picture. But Flying Model Rockets kind of breaks that mold a little bit, because Flying Model Rockets doesn't seem to take place in the same time as the rest of the album. The rest of the album feels very college-y, where this feels like... It feels more like adolescent, like in your backyard, just hanging with your neighbors.
Yeah,
that's what it's about.
For sure. It definitely feels like it feels domestic. It doesn't feel.
It feels
like
very domestic.
A lot of albums, especially albums that we've gone through specifically, but like albums in this genre, tend to revolve around school or tend to revolve around like the change of scenery and change of pace with moving to college or dealing with.
And
high
this
school.
album's no different.
No,
in
for
fact,
sure.
it's to a T that.
Yeah, but this song specifically deals less. It deals with like that same character that would be in that setting, but at home. It feels like that one Aaron West song where he's talking about like watching his love on the porch, like and the light flickering off of her, and I'm just like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just a very domestic setting, and it feels like weirdly warm, even if that's
Very.
not like the direction they're going for. Just like that home feeling makes it feel a lot warmer.
And it's a very interesting choice to this EP, because as I said, this song kind of breaks the mold because most of the EP doesn't feel like it really has a point. It feels like, here's a setting, we are going to build the setting around you. And it makes sense because as a collection of old songs, they were really written in that setting. So I assume what they did is they took the songs that best represented that setting and put them into an EP. And it works very well. But this song breaks that mold so much because while the rest of the album doesn't really change in time, this song feels like it's starting at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's starting in a home before they go off to college, before they're thrust into the world, which is what the rest of the songs are about. The rest of the songs are just kind of like fumbling your way through.
Right.
But this is the song of this is where you started, and it all started as shit. And that's kind of what the song's about. Like, it starts this way.
Yeah, right.
It might feel more homey, but you always have these like little things you have to figure out, and it's a kind of uncomfortable.
And it's a good foreshadowing for like the emotional tone for the rest of the album, because one of the main lines is it's a black-eyed trust respect with pain, and it's like that's exactly what they're going for the rest of the album, is that like the stuff that you learned throughout this time, the stuff that we learned throughout when we were making these songs was brought upon by like hurtful real world experiences, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just something that you can't really get to unless you experience some pain.
Yeah, it's interesting because for EPs, you're not really used to having a huge intro track.
Right.
Because usually it is just a collection of songs.
But this is a fucking intro track.
Even if the rest of the EP doesn't, even if the rest of the EP at certain points does feel like more of a collection of songs, like this intro track, like as you said, knocks it out of the park. It's
Right.
such a good introduction to this EP.
Should we?
We can move on to Lipstick Covered Magnet if you'd like.
That's such an interesting. I really want to know like the background behind that title for that song.
It's an odd title. It fits
Yeah.
the song.
I think the album that Quinn was talking about. Quinn isn't on the show this week, by the way. We'll figure out when he's gonna be like he'll be a little bit like Schrodinger's guest. You don't know if he's gonna be on the show until it is observed that he is on the show. Quinn mentioned the album. I think the album was I Hate My Friends, the 2008 self-recorded album.
There it is.
Yeah.
I assume that's the one. But it was an album that had most of the songs from this EP on it scattered throughout.
Yes. And this is one of them. This is the first song that was from I Hate My Friends, and
It's... I mean, one of the things I love most about this EP is that it's as quirky as the front bottoms get,
Right.
but with super like high level production. And this is kind of the first thing that really cues you in on. While Flying Model Rockets is, I would say that's easily the most serious song on the album.
right.
It feels very grounded in reality, while the rest of it, as I said, is kind of fumbling you right through. So you never really get a full grasp on what's going on during the songs, especially songs like Lipstick Covered Magnet and Be Nice to Me.
Yeah,
They're
right.
just all over the place so fast, but you get this feeling of you're there, you're in this scenery where you're trying to get your way through and you have no idea what to do.
And I think that like that fast pacing and that like sort of confusing imagery and like not sticking to one image or to one scene for very long is very reflexive of the album, because I guess I should say it helps pull you into the world a lot easier, because you are just as confused as they were when they were going through the things that they wrote the song about.
I agree, and one of the something that confuses me a little bit is that Be Nice to Me isn't earlier in the album, because I completely agree with everything you're saying, and I think Be Nice to Me kind of encapsulates that the best, where literally every next line is a separate thought.
Right.
Like, it's all over the place, but it really gets you into it, because you kind of, I would have liked that as like the second song for exactly what you're talking about. It really, that kind of writing helps you get into the album, it eases you into it.
I see what you're saying, but I never really minded its location. I think Be Nice to Me makes for a good penultimate song, just because like it's sort of, it's exactly what you said. It encapsulates the emotion of the album.
It does.
So it's a good way to be like, hey, in case you forgot just what this EP is about, here's Be Nice to Me. Just before you leave the door, just remember you don't know where the fuck you're going.
That's a fair point. I mean, I love Be Nice to Me. It's probably my second favorite front bottom song.
I think 12 Feet Deep might be, at least off this EP, definitely my favorite song.
So I feel like we've gotten through Lipstick Covered Magnet.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very weird song.
It's a very weird song. I just like to point out, like, the chorus really gets to me.
Oh my god, the chorus, can we just say the lines? Because they're some of my favorite front bottoms lines.
Right.
The chorus is, and I'm gonna get on my knees, would you kick me in the face, please, and it'll make whatever I say sound like poetry, and as my gums begin to bleed, the words will fall like teeth, and whatever we had locked up now is free.
Can we, that is like some prime show don't tell, like.
That is, and it's also front bottoms to a T in the show don't tell. It's like confusing statements that connect. You're like, we've all been there. We're that desperate for it.
Right, exactly. And it's also, it gets across the state of confusion, because he's saying, I don't know what the hell is going on, so at this point, just fucking sock me in the teeth, because like, at least then maybe whatever I say will make sense, because honestly, like, I don't know what the hell is happening.
It's, again, this EP's very... A lot of EPs I wouldn't really want to go over for this show, but this EP does such a good job at feeling like a complete thought.
Yeah.
Because, like, Flying Model Rockets is kind of this... Even though it's foreshadowing the trouble you'll face, it feels safer. Again, whether or not they were going for that, as you pointed out, it feels domestic. It feels safer. And then Lipstick Covered Magnet, you kind of get this, like, uneasy feeling, like, oh, it's getting anxiety. And then you get to 12 Feet Deep, where things just kind of get crazy.
Yeah.
Things get weird.
12 Feet Deep is at an emotional point that my sister likes to bring up a lot, where basically everything's so fucked up, you just laugh at it.
Yeah, it's this level of, while Lipstick Covered Magnet kind of breathes desperation to you, 12 Feet Deep is, I don't want to say acceptance, but it's very similar to what you're saying. It's kind of just going, well, it's all shit.
Right, like, shit's fucked. What are we gonna do?
And then it's kind of just like basking in that. It's like, we'll live our lives this entire way because it's shit. But when we get through it, like we've made it this far.
Right.
It can't be that bad.
It's the follow through. It's like, all right, everything is confusing and everything's fucked up. What are we gonna do? Shit, I don't know. Just fucking go with it, I guess.
And the thing is, Lipstick Covered Magnet and 12 Feet Deep don't need to be in that order simply because they're just such not generic, but they're more feelings than stories. They're like settings.
You're right in the sense that they don't need to be in that order.
I think they work better in the order though.
Oh, so here's the thing, right? You could put Lipstick Covered Magnet. You could switch out Lipstick Covered Magnet with like Jim Bogart or Be Nice to Me.
I could see that,
but I don't think you could move 12 Feet Deep. Like,
really,
if we're gonna look at the EP as a whole thing and sort of analyze it the same way we do as an album,
okay,
I think 12 Feet Deep belongs in the middle because it's kind of like
the stretch.
Yeah, it's kind of the stretch. It's kind of like you've already dealt with the confusing shit that's fucked up your life, and now you're at the point where you're like, all right, I guess I can't, like, I'm kind of losing control over things, so what do I have control over? I have control over, like, who I'm with, even if that person, like, is toxic to me, and I have control over how I present myself, so even if shit's fucked, I'm at least going to hold on to what I do have, and I think 12 Feet Deep gets that across.
It does, I would agree. The thing is, I've thought about this EP a lot, but talking about it with you is making me analyze it more than I have before, which I like.
Good.
Because even though I have looked at it similar to an album, right now I'm looking at like fully, if this was an album, how I'd feel about it. And that's very interesting, because you're right. 12 Feet Deep is very particular where it is in the album, even though the emotion could fit anywhere, because again, it is an EP that sets a scene.
Right.
In its own world, it does kind of tell that story.
Yeah, right.
And it does work well.
I definitely think 12 Feet Deep is in a good place on the EP. Maybe you could put it later, like you could put it fourth and it would be cool, but I don't think you could put it any earlier than the third song. I don't think 12 Feet Deep would make a good opener or a good second song.
I think Flying Model Rockets is the only song on this album that could be an opener.
Exactly, right.
Is there anything else you have to say about that?
No, I think we can move on to Jim Bogart, which is a fun song.
Jim Bogart is, again, a very interesting song. It's also catchy as hell in my opinion.
Right.
And it's kind of the first of the second half of the album, which, or at least, I kind of relate this to Awkward Conversations a bit, where it's just, while 12 Feet Deep is fuck it, we'll go through.
Yeah.
We'll just go for it. Awkward Conversations in Jim Bogart is more I guess we'll push through.
Yeah, essentially.
It's shitty. I mean, I guess I have nothing else to do but try.
Right. And like, yeah, you're right. Those two songs,
they're more somber about it.
Yeah, they're more somber about it, and one is more about the reminiscing, and the other one is more about the like dealing with what you're actually in at the moment.
True.
Jim Bogart is all about like missing somebody very dearly from your hometown that you can't go see anymore.
Yeah.
But like even just the thought of sleeping on their floor would be better than like sleeping on a bed, and like it's like it's retrospective versus I don't know what the opposite of retrospective is.
Introspective?
No,
that's looking inside
yourself. But I guess retrospective is looking back, and I guess the next song will be kind of introspective because it's more like looking at where you are currently, and like we'll talk about that when we get to the next song. But Jim Bogart is all about like whatever. It's like dealing with the aftermath. It's like you've kind of accepted your position and how fucked up things are, but as you're like dealing with it, you're thinking back to how things used to be and how they weren't as bad, and you miss it deeply.
It kind of feels like the opposite of 12 Feet Deep.
Right, exactly.
And at where it is in the album, it feels like a come down from 12 Feet Deep. It feels like 12 Feet Deep is riding the high.
Right.
And then you hit Jim Bogart, and it all the magic kind of disappears. You're like, what the fuck have I been doing? This life is kind of shit.
Right. It's like it's like the difference between you know that one comic, I can't remember his name. It's like J.C. Green or something. It's a dog sitting in the room, and the room's on fire. He's like, this is fine.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Those panels, this is fine. I'm okay with what's happening. That's 12 Feet Deep. And then a while like after that comic went out, he released like a follow-up to that comic where the dog's like, this is not fun. How did I let it get this bad? And he goes around with a fire extinguisher.
Oh, that's great.
And that's like Jim Bogart. That's a little more.
I mean, I guess I wouldn't say Jim Bogart's really. I wouldn't say Jim Bogart goes as far as like to do anything about it, and I think that kind of feeds into how I feel about the EP. That the EP, it doesn't really though there is these emotional changes in the character, none of them are necessary for the character to change. The character doesn't really change at all.
He just kind of...
It's snapshots of his life,
Right.
or of whoever the song's about's life, but at no point do the character really have this, like... development or changing moment, or even the story as a whole changes.
Yeah.
And I think you can attribute part of that to it's so short, so they kind of were focusing on it being a Snapchat, and it works well.
And it wasn't like this EP was built specifically to like tell this story. It's just a collection of songs.
And I think that makes it more amazing that it kind of does tell this story.
Yeah, that it works that well. It says something about like the Front Bottoms as a band and like as the style that they write in, and how well it can, like, even if it's not all part of the same album,
yeah,
the songs can still work well together because they share a very like core emotion.
It's when everything you write feels like a snapshot of your life. Those snapshots will fit together regardless of how the music sounds, because your life fits together in those points.
Exactly. I think that's a good place to transition to Be Nice to Me.
Yeah, that's the end of Jim Bogart. Then we get to Be Nice to Me, which is, full disclaimer, one of my favorite Front Bottom songs.
Really?
I think the writing on it is some of the most fun writing I've heard in a long time. It's just great.
That's very interesting, considering it's kind of a song about dealing with crippling depression. The first line is literally, I've got boulders on my shoulders,
collarbones begin to crack. There's very little left of me, and it's never coming back.
Yeah.
So
are you okay, Jeremy?
It gives me a vibe of Folle à Deux.
Really?
Where it's just, I'm going to actually steal something from Fall Out Boy, completely out of context. Fall Out Boy recently did an interview about their new album, and they described their newest album as they were trying to make the musical equivalent of a cat trying to catch a laser pointer. And I realized that is, in my opinion, a fantastic way to describe at least parts of Folle à Deux. And it reminds me of this song, where there is a setting it's telling, there's a story it's telling, but the entire album's like, what's that, where, what, who?
Right, yeah.
Every line's like, it's very, I wouldn't call it anecdotal writing, but it's scattered.
Right.
The thoughts are scattered even though they make this statement, and it does it so well. It does a remarkable job of finding meaning in the chaos and in the confusion.
All right, I see you. I can definitely see that. I just like this song because all the Front Bottom songs have a lot of emotion behind them, but I think this one uses imagery to portray emotion.
So much imagery.
Like, it's just...
And all of it's good.
And all of it is good, right. It's all, like... There's these interesting plays with, like, repeating lines and refrains, dealing with time and, like...
They have, like, a line where they'll change it a little bit in the song to, like, change the meaning of it. It works very well.
Yeah.
It also has some fantastic imagery. It feels like a big, bombastic song. At its heart, it's so personal, and the juxtaposition just really does something for me.
And I just love the lyricism because Brian Sella is a beautiful poet.
I would say this is some of his best lyricism.
The top line that we talked about before, got boulders on my shoulders, collarbones begin to crack. Great line. And then another one that comes up later. I try to write you poems, but the words don't make sense. My hand grips the pencil, but the fingers are too tense. And I try to sow emotion, but my eyes won't seem to wet.
And you can even tell from just that how scattered it is.
Right.
How this song breathes anxiety.
Yeah,
you listen to it and you feel anxiety. It reminds you of like a Jeff Rosenstock song in that way.
For sure.
Where you listen to it and you're just like, oh God, he's nervous. Something's happening, man.
This dude's like fucked up. He needs like a tea and a hug or something.
I mean, yeah, and it feels so fast. It feels so big. It feels so bombastic and anthemic. But it's so personal.
It's just this anxious teen who's trying to deal with some shit.
And it's so beautiful, and it encapsulates kind of what I love most about the Front Bottoms, that they take these small ideas, these things that are so personal, and they make them sound so huge, they make them into such a bigger picture.
And you're right.
I don't know.
No, for sure. But they also do that really well on the quiet setting. Even when it's just like on a more intimate level, they still get across that level of emotion and intensity very well, just like Awkward Conversations.
I know. I was like, I know you're feeding into that song.
I'm segueing like a...
I'm like, what? I was looking at it the whole time, like, nice segue, Rob.
Awkward Conversations. It's great, right? Because this is it's the last track on the Rose EP. It is a re-recording, so it's a remastered, but it's just Brian Sella and his guitar.
Yeah, while a lot of the album feels big for how small it is, this song kind of, I mean, it feels very small for how big it is, I guess. Like, while something like Be Nice to Me feels ginormous, and when you look at it, it feels very personal, this song feels very personal, and when you look at it, it starts to seem bigger. It starts to look like a bigger idea.
For sure. And Brian Sella actually said that this song is very much about a self-destructive relationship, or about a relationship with a self-destructive person.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a very relatable topic. We've all been in relationships, whether they're romantic or of another dynamic, where the other person is just, it's one-sided. The other person just only cares about themselves. And it's interesting, right? Because so much of this album was like, shit's fucked, what am I gonna do about it? Nothing, I'm anxious, or fuck it, I'm just gonna go with it because I can't change it. But now it's the point where it's like, wait a second, this isn't right. Like, I know I need to do something about it, but in this moment, all I can really realize is this is kind of fucked up.
And that is kind of, it's the only kind of closing statement that would work for this album.
Right.
For an album where, I say nothing happens, but I don't mean that in a bad way.
Right.
A lot of this album feels like the character doesn't change, but the setting is, you get a bigger sense of the setting the more songs that go on. You start to feel like you're in this situation. In Awkward Conversations, you feel like you're in a dorm room with him.
Right.
You feel also that way on Jim Bogart. I feel like I'm wandering the hallways with him, like knocking on the door with him. Just, it feels so personal. I feel like this is the only thing that could end this album, because at the end of an album where nothing happens, something happening wouldn't make sense.
Right.
But an album that would end just on another song would also not make sense.
Right.
The only thing that would fit is something where the setting is the change. Basically, nothing is changing about the setting. It's just the character going, this is fucked.
Right.
And that's the end.
Yeah, that's it. It's just like, this, I should probably do something about this.
The Rosie
and then it's over.
And then you kind of realize the Rosie piece just basically a wake-up call for him. It's basically just, it's someone just living their life, and then at one point going, all this stuff I just talked about?
This sucks. Like, I need to change something about it.
I mean, whether it was worth it at the time or not, it's not worth it now.
Right.
I'm past this point in my life. I can't live like this.
Right. I can't live with somebody who rolls down the windows just to smoke menthol cigarettes when it's fucking freezing.
And it's
outside.
Beautiful because there's so few albums that feel that way. So many albums, and I feel like this is a huge part of the emo genre, and I value it a lot, are like, here's a story about someone who goes through these things and comes out ahead, or at least comes out alive.
Right. They usually try to get a full journey out of the album.
Yeah,
but I mean, that might just be the nature of this is an EP, and again, this is a transitional EP, right?
It might, but it's just fascinating that they did it in the first place. For whatever reasons, the fact that they made an EP that felt so compact and so different is just fascinating to me. That they made an EP that really feels like a miniature album.
Right.
It doesn't... Usually it's an album or it's a collection of songs. It feels like a miniature album, and I love that.
It's great. It's definitely unique, and
It's
definitely
unique.
like something I don't think I've ever seen from another band.
Yeah.
Or at least if I have, not as well.
Not as well. Again, there's other EPs that bands release that try to tell, like... Again, they'll try to tell stories, but an EP is hard to tell a full story because it's so short.
Yeah, right.
And the thing the Front Bottoms do that's so unique is they
Don't try to tell a
They
full
don't
story.
try.
They just tell a story, a very short story with a very very specific, limited setting to it, and it just works because they're not trying to fit a full album's worth of content and storytelling into an EP, but they're also not trying to just toss songs together into the skillet.
It takes 6 songs for the character to make one simple realization, so it never feels forced. It never feels too slow though, because the songs are fun and they're sceneries, they're snapshots. And I don't know. I don't have anything else to say.
I think that wraps it up pretty nicely. That was the Rose EP, and I guess we'll move on to the recommendation, which is...
Oh damn, we got a lot out of that one.
Wow, dude. Wow, we talked about that for like half an hour.
Talked about that album, an EP for 30 minutes.
Whoopsie daisies.
Oh,
We're
well.
only gonna end up talking about Ratboys for like 20 minutes.
I was concerned we were going to fall short on this episode because we were talking about an EP and an album that I'm not hugely familiar with. But oh well.
Anyway, let's on to Ratboys, shall we?
Okay, Rob. So this was your... Oh.
Yeah, there they are.
So this was your prescription to me for this week.
This is GN by Ratboys. It's their newest album that dropped June 30th of this year.
Oh wow, it's new.
It's new. It's a new boy. And it's great. So like, I don't know a lot about the backstory of this album, but from listening to it, it just sounds like an album about touring, or maybe not about touring, but like an album written while touring, because so many of the songs just take place all over the place. They're very concise songs, and they have a good like start and finish individually, but like she jumps from like Ohio to or from Ohio to California to Kentucky, and just it almost feels like an album that's just a bunch of songs put together that kind of makes sense.
I would say how I feel about it is it's an album about journeys.
Right.
Not one journey, not one adventure. Because you're right, she jumps over the place, and every song kind of feels like a different adventure, but the line that kind of stays throughout them is every song's like this mini adventure for whoever she's talking about or whatever characters in the song. It's always a lot of this album is a character in a new situation trying to fumble their way through, figure out where they are, and see the universe for something different.
Right. It's definitely it's not a journey. It's journeys. The first song is Molly. So the first song on the album is Molly, and Molly is just kind of a cute little like almost a love song. It's about like meeting this girl and like dealing with this like awkward interaction of emotions, and there's a part about slaying a dragon, and it's just I don't know. It's just very cute.
It feels
very,
like a first song.
Right. It does.
And not in a. It feels like the song that will kind of ease you into the album. It's like this album is going to take a lot of, I don't want to say left turns, but a lot of
turns.
A lot of turns. It's going to go from one place to another. There's going to be a lot of weird lines and weird moments about like trying to understand the universe and understand yourself.
Yep.
And it goes into a lot of very abstract directions. So starting with a song that kind of, as you said, kind of feels like simple and like a fairy tale. It's just like her, just like here's this fun little story.
Right. Let me wean you into this album with this fun little tale of two girls who like each other and dealing with slaying dragons and like the pressure to act on something when like there's a one line where it's like, well, how am I supposed to make a piece of art with that at stake, without a piece of pen and paper? And it's like dealing with this anxiety of being forced to act up on something when you're not really ready for it.
Yeah, and I would say I don't know, because I would not like this as an opener to many albums. I think the album it is makes it an exception.
Right.
Because the fact is that the album is so, I mean, I feel like I'm going to say this a lot throughout this. It's very vibey.
Yeah,
the album is so vibey. Like it's an album that just kind of passes by as you listen to it.
Right, and not only does it do that like lyrically, it does it sonically.
Oh, especially sonically.
Right, because like it's this like weird indie rock, but it takes trips into like country and like this weird electronic phase, like with
I would say it does it mostly sonically, and lyrically just is kind of an added, just kind of helps it along. Because sonically it just kind of vibes, and then lyrically with all the talk about random adventures and journeys, it kind of just fits that sonically.
Yeah.
But this song works so well introing that kind of album because it's an album that is just going to be so many different journeys, and you're kind of worried like, what if I get lost? And this song is a very like
it eases you in.
You
start out slow, and then you
start
build
out slow
up into these weird turns and
It's a great opener.
So the next song is Elvis is in the Freezer, and this song's actually hilarious. You want to know what the song is about?
I would love to.
It's actually about her dead cat.
Oh no.
Yeah, so here's a fun story. This was an interview with Overblown. Julia Steiner, who's the lead singer, says that the song was about their family's former pet cat named Elvis. He got sick when he was around 6 years old, and the family had to put the cat down while she was in college. But they live in Louisville, which is in Tennessee, I think, or Kentucky. I don't know. Anyway,
Louisville, Kentucky.
Louisville, Kentucky. And it was in November, and there was a lot of rain in Louisville during that month, so they didn't want to bury the cat because it was all mud. So they just wrapped him in a blanket and stuck him in the freezer in the basement. And when she came home from college, it was for Thanksgiving break, the first thing that her mom said to her when she walked in the door was, "Elvis is in the freezer downstairs, just so you know."
One thing that definitely struck me more as I listened more to this album is, at first you're just like, oh, it's just some lyrics about wandering around. And then as you kind of get past the vibiness of it and start listening to the lyrics, they get weirder real fast.
Real fast, yeah.
They start getting like, what did she just say?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like, I don't know. It's poetic, but it's also abstract.
It's very abstract,
and it's abstract, but it tries to be concise. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's not purely abstract. It's not like painting a square triangle on a white canvas abstract. It's more like
you don't feel lost throughout the album.
You don't feel lost. You just feel a little confused, but not in a bad way.
I would say the vibiness definitely helps with that, because whenever you feel lost, it kind of just like pushes you forward. It's just like, don't worry about it. It's all okay.
It's good. Just chill out.
You never feel, in complete contrast to like Be Nice to Me, you never feel that anxiety in this album. Even though there are definitely like emo elements, especially in the songwriting.
Oh, for sure.
You never feel that anxiety. Every time you like like get caught up. It's just the music just kind of mellows you out. It's very just take it as it goes.
It's a much more chill approach to
It's
dieting.
a very chill approach.
So let's move on to the next song, which is West Side. West Side is like, I don't even know what to say about West Side. It's just kind of like this weird, not world building, but a lot of imagery based on scenery, because it's all about like describing this area and like, I don't even know. It's kind of anecdotal, I guess.
It is. It kind of, I don't want to say it comes out of nowhere, but it's very different than what you'd expect lyrically from the third song,
right.
especially when the first two songs were very, you say they were concise because they seem to use like each line to tell like something different. They kind of, every line was pushing it forward. Every note was pushing it forward. The album never feels like it stalls. And on this album, she very much like focuses on very particular imagery and starts to repeat it.
Right.
And she's clearly trying to get something across, and it's different and it's interesting.
It definitely feels more like some songs feel like poems and some songs feel like stories. This song feels way more like a poem.
Yes, I would absolutely. It feels, I don't want to say heavy-handed, but more heavy-handed than the other stuff, where she wants you to focus. She's like, other times throughout a lot of the album, she's just like, just follow the story, it'll lead you to the end. But in this part, she's like, this is important. You need to focus on this imagery because it's important for what the album wants to say.
Right. And then we move on to the fourth. This is such a long album. Should we do this song by song?
I mean, I don't know. I don't have enough to say about all these songs, dude.
Yeah, right. Maybe we should kind of just do like a little bit of jumping.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have that much to say about a lot of these songs.
Yeah.
Especially towards this part of the album, it kind of
Dips a little bit, you think?
I would say the vibiness kind of just blends together a bit for me. I kind of get lost in the songs.
Right.
The thing is, they always push me forward, so I never feel like I'm like not moving through the album. It never feels like it's stalling. It just feels like it's blending together.
Yeah, right. Nothing really pops out at you, or there's not a lot of like spikes.
I would say that's kind of the entire album. Nothing really.
But there's
very little pops out to me.
But like, it's such a good vibe.
It's just very vibey. I would say, I don't know. At its basis, I want to say this album's just not for me.
Yeah, right. That's fair.
With the front bombs, how we were talking about, nothing really happens, but you still have this emotional journey.
Yeah.
And on this, I don't feel that emotional journey. I feel like I enjoy the album, but just for me, it feels like not enough's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And just as it's kind of passing by, as you get into the later songs, like Crying About Planets, Dangerous Visions,
right,
it just kind of feels like I listened to half this album and I enjoyed it.
Right.
But I haven't really taken that much from it.
Yeah, right. It's been a good journey, but you haven't pulled a lot from it.
No. Yeah, I don't want to say no. No, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I guess, I don't know, what do you think is your favorite song off this album?
My favorite song on this album is hands down The Record.
Really?
When we get into The Record and Peter and the Wild Boy, those songs grabbed my attention.
Really? Interesting.
Especially The Record. The thing about The Record and Peter the Wild Boy is they both feel like closing tracks, but they feel like different closing tracks.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Because like The Record definitely feels like a bookend track. Like it kind of wraps everything up together into a neat little bow. And then Peter the Wild Boy is like this weird exploratory track about a specific character, but the way it's constructed feels like an ending.
The thing is, so The Record basically is all about these like little journeys and experiences and adventures. So when you reach the end, there's a lot of routes you could go, but there's two that they show. The Record is the route where they basically go, all these journeys are fine and good, but at their basis, they're personal. These are stories, but these are my stories, and they deserve to be mine. And that's kind of what The Record is. Like, this is a record of my life. These are the things I've gone through. And then Peter and the Wild Boy is kind of looking at it from a very different perspective of, these are our stories, and we all have our stories. This random person I've never talked about has this beautiful story.
This person that she's talking about, fun fact, is a feral child. There's another Wikipedia article prompt. Yeah. He lived naked in the woods and then lived in the royal palace.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. They both feel like bookends,
right,
but they feel like one or the other would work as a bookend. It's very weird that they follow each other.
Kind of like a choose your own adventure kind of thing, where like you could pick The Record as the end of this album adventure, or you could pick Peter and the Wild Boy
it's weird
as the end of this album adventure.
I guess it's just weird that they're both there because they both feel like very good closers.
It's actually, so according to this interview with Julius Steiner, Peter and the Wild Boy is the oldest song on GN, written in around 2011. It wasn't originally going to be included on the album, but we made a last-second decision to scrub the intended final track and sub it for Peter. There was supposed to be a different track.
That's an odd choice.
That ends this album.
I don't know how I feel about scrapping closer at the last second, like with how much I think closers are important.
Right, but who knows what that track was like, and I guess it must have not been enough for them to stick with it.
Yeah, I mean, right? I don't mind Peter the Wild Boy. I'm surprised they didn't make
the closer. The two.
Yeah, because I feel like I would like that more. The record feels like such a closing track. It feels like here are all these stories that were, though they were personal to me, they don't feel very personal. They feel like there's stories I'm telling, and at the end you go, but they are personal. Regardless of how I tell them, they're going to be my stories. And it feels like a very good closing. And then the last track doesn't feel out of place. It just feels like...
It doesn't feel out of place for the album, but it feels kind of out of place for its position.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
I could definitely see the record making a pretty good closer for this album. I don't have a personal, I don't care enough about the closer to,
That's fair.
gripe about Peter the Wild Boy being the closer.
Not many people do.
Damn.
I'm one of the few, I guess. I don't know.
But I definitely see where you're coming from, and I think it'd be interesting. I almost feel like if I had never known that Peter and the Wild Boy existed and it just ended on the record, I think I would have been satisfied.
Yeah, I mean...
I think I probably would have... I don't know if I would have missed it, because Peter and the Wild Boy is a good song, but,
yeah,
the record would have made a great closer.
The thing about this album is, even though I listened to it and I didn't love it, I never felt unsatisfied, because it delivers exactly what you feel like it's going to.
Right.
As of the second song, you kind of know, what direction it's going.
It's going to be some indie chill rock jams.
Yeah, and it
through and through.
It never... Regardless of it, never really changing too much, it never gets boring either. It's always pushing forward. It's moving you forward, and you always feel like you're along for the ride.
Maybe it just takes a few more listens to really, get knee-deep in the story of it.
I've enjoyed it more as I've listened to it more, because the lyrics are very all over the place sometimes, and it can help to listen to it more.
Right, and you like that kind of stuff. You like lyrics that are a little all over the place.
I mean, we just talked about my love for Be Nice to Me.
Exactly, and Foil Do, and all the anecdotal writing.
Yeah, I mean... so do you have anything else to say about GN?
No, I think...
Or is it GM? There's a song
There's a song called GM, but the album is called GN.
Oh, that's not confusing.
Yeah, right? Not at all. They're a very good band, and they're very chill. I saw them first when they opened for Diet Sig with Sports, which made perfect sense, and, I don't know, seeing them live,
Wait, what?
What?
Did you say Sports?
Yeah. Not the album Sports by Modern Baseball, a band called Sports.
Oh, okay. Never mind, my bad.
There's a band called Sports.
Oh, that's not confusing.
Welcome to the emo scene.
Yeah, it's going to be our new catchphrase. Well, that's not confusing. Fall Out Boy released his new song with a 31-word title. Well, that's not confusing.
By Fall Out Boy. I think I've said enough. I think GN is a great album and Ratboys is a good band.
I would absolutely agree. Very interesting, and it's something I wouldn't normally listen to, so I'm very happy you got me to listen to it.
I'm glad you got into it. I guess that wraps up this week of Emo Trash. We will now put out the new recommendation from you.
Oh, well, first we start with Common.
First we start with the Common. Yeah, what was our Common?
What was our Common?
Shit. We always do this.
Give us 1 second.
Let me think. What did we pick? We
found something good and we were like, oh, that'll work.
Yeah, it was Coffee Project.
Oh, we're gonna do
Coffee Project.
So,
we're gonna do the album Moved On by Coffee Project.
Coffee Project's not very well known, but Rob got me into them a year ago?
Yeah, something like that. My buddy Billy showed them to me because they're like a folk punk band out of Gainesville, Florida.
And I do love my folk punk, and so do you.
Who don't love some folk punk these days. And fun fact, the trumpet or trombone player, one of the two, one of them horn boys, is there trombone on that album? Probably.
Most of it's trumpet, so I assume it's trumpet.
It's probably trumpet. The trumpet player for Coffee Project is the trumpet player for Less Than Jake. Yeah.
Apparently that got you to listen to it? Were you like, Less Than Jake's involved? Now I have to.
Honestly, low-key.
It's hilarious.
You can take the kid out of ska, but you can't take the ska out of the kid.
But he got me into Coffee Project, and they're really fun.
Yeah.
So we're going to do Coffee Project Moved On, which I think is it's very interesting, because a lot of the albums we've talked about them from a level of very emotional, maturity.
Mm-hmm. And then this is just not... I mean, some songs are definitely mature. Some songs hit some more, personal, and then please.
It feels like a very childish album.
I'm so excited to talk about Oh Sweet Pickle. I'm just so excited.
Is Oh Sweet Pickle with the dog?
Yes.
It's a great song. It's a very childish album, but it does it very well.
I'm gonna spend like 10 minutes talking about that song and just talking about how good of a boy Pickle is.
How good of a boy. It's like, now that you have that, it's a very fun album. It'll be a fun talk. And for our prescription, I am going to prescribe to you Against Me's as the Eternal Cowboy.
Which, for some reason, I never got around to listening to, even though I'm obsessed with Reinventing Axl Rose and White Crosses and Transgender Dysphoria Blues. I just never got around to Eternal Cowboy.
Rob has a really weird thing where he knows half Against Me's albums like the back of his hand and has never heard the other half. It's interesting.
Can someone just kick me in the face? Kick me in the teeth, please, so at least I can listen to some music that isn't the same 3 albums over and over again.
Oh my god. I mean, probably not, but we'll try, right?
Yeah, that's what the show's all about, is exposing to new music and having fun with friends and talking about emo bullshit.
I mean, I agree. I'm having a great time.
Me too.
So, thank you for listening to another episode of Emo Trash. Until next week, we'll see you in the garbage.